Hey guys, today we're gonna once again talk about quotes. I know we've been doing it a lot, but I want to talk about how we introduce quotes. So if you're writing a sentence and you want to include a quote in it, what do you do? Okay, most of the time, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna use a comma to introduce your quote. Okay, so look at all these examples. The flight attendant asked, comma, may I see your boarding pass? Buddha says, comma, even death is not to be feared by one who has lived wisely. On May 18th, Charlie states, comma, she just stared at me blankly. All right, so in each of those situations, I say, who said the quote, right? So and so says, so and so asks, so and so states. Then I put a comma, and then I put the quote. Okay? Now, some of the time, we want to use a colon. Okay? So we use the colon when I put a complete sentence introducing my quote. Okay? So if I didn't have the quote, I could just put a period and all the stuff introducing it would stand alone as a complete sentence. Okay? So these examples. In Food Rules, Michael Pollan summarizes his extensive writing about food with 7 words of advice. So I could put a period there, and that would be a complete sentence, and it would be totally fine. But I put a colon, and I introduced a quote, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Okay? Same thing here. In his next progress report, Charlie discussed the consequences for Algernon's brain. I could put a period there, I could stop, I could be done, it's a complete sentence. Okay? And then I put my quote after the colon. Right now, sometimes we don't need to actually put punctuation, and we only do that when our quotation is very short and flows directly with the rest of our sentence. Okay, so let's look at our example. In her closing statement, the prosecutor spoke forcefully of the defendant's callous disregard for human life. So I'm using a very short quote, okay, and it flows right with the rest of my sentence. All right, let's look at another example. Soon after Algernon's death, Charlie begins to experience what he refers to as the burnout. So my quote is just the burnout. Very short, flows in with the rest of my sentence. All right, the phrase be that as it may appears far too often in this essay. Again, very short quote, flows with my sentence. Okay, now when I am introducing my quote by saying like so and so says, so and so yelled, so and so blames, whatever it is. All right, I don't always have to put it before the quote. I can also put it after. Okay, so for example, I have this quote: Algernon died 2 days ago, and I said Charlie writes. So I put the introduction after the quote, and that's totally fine. But when you do that, you take whatever punctuation was at the end of your original quote. So normally, right, this would be a complete sentence, and normally I would have a period at the end, or maybe like a exclamation point if he's yelling it. But since I'm putting my introduction after the quote, I change it to a comma. Okay, so no matter what my quote originally ended with, if I am finishing up with my introduction, I change that punctuation to a comma. Okay. All right, so we're going to do more practice with this and see how we're doing with it tomorrow.